All right, good evening. We'll get going here, I believe, and we might be joined by Mr. Sumner as another panelist here a little bit later in the evening. Hopefully that'll be the case so we can answer some questions for you as well as we go through. Welcome back to Norton High School. This is going to be a very exciting year for us as we reopen after a very long hiatus away from school. We've been really excitedly preparing a bunch of things in order to welcome our students back. Thank you for joining us this evening as well. I think it'll hopefully be an educational evening, and then I'll definitely be answering some questions as well. So as I mentioned, we're scheduled for about an hour today, this evening. I'm going to take you through a presentation. It's got some images of what's going on inside the school, some descriptions of some things. Much of this is similar to what I had sent out last night in the first newsletter of the year with our sort of initial reopening information. And I'll be posting that to our website, as well as on Friday, tomorrow, I'll be sending out an additional newsletter that kind of kicks off our hybrid site, which I'll talk a little bit more about here tonight. As you can see, the next thing that I was going to do was to introduce panelists, but since Mr. Sumner hasn't quite joined with us yet, hopefully he will, I'll introduce him when he arrives. Mrs. Benner, who is our assistant principal, is currently on maternity leave. She'll be rejoining us again early in October. So we wait for her to get back. Be a big help as well. So as I said, really we're going to be going through this initial presentation of what the reopening is going to look like here at Norton High School, and then we'll be taking some questions and answers. So you'll notice at the bottom of the screen there's a Q&A box. Please feel free to enter into all of those that are going to be put in, and I'll answer as many of those as I can as we move through the night at the end here. So the first thing I just wanted to share with you that's kind of a theme of our reopening as we're rolling this out to students as well, and this will be a big theme as we do some of our education for students when they first arrive, as well as starting early next week, sending out some of this material to them so they get a chance to see some of our cleaning protocols and the way that the building is laid out ahead of time, is a big sort of nod to personal responsibility and accountability. In a pandemic here, it is really reliant on individuals to make really good decisions to protect the larger community. And that's something that draws right from our portrait of a graduate, is to act responsibly with the interests of the larger community in mind. And I think the pandemic, as it is now, is really important to keep that in mind. Just a personal story here. Last night, I happened to be on another one of these on the participant side from the Dedham Board of Health, which is where I live. And Dedham, this past cycle, when looking at town data, was switched by the state to red. And it was switched to red because actually there had been 2 gatherings of young adults, one actually of about high school students, which led to some about 18 to 20 positive tests. And that shifted the town to red, which disrupted certainly the school reopening plan, as well as maybe town sports and things like that. So it is important that our young people definitely are thinking about themselves with the larger interests of the community in mind to preserve and maintain the momentum of opening the school. There's going to be kind of a thing that we're going to hit on here a little bit that is hopefully a bit of a catchphrase, which is that Lancers are going to wear, wash, and wait. And what that means is that we're going to wear masks, we're going to wash our hands, and we're going to wait in order to have 6 feet of physical distance whenever we're in school. This is kind of some of the signage that will be seen throughout the school. So we're going to wear masks, wash hands, and wait 6 feet apart. I'm going to take a little bit, and this is going to be a little bit awkward since I'm presenting, but I thought I would take this minute to sort of premiere a little bit, or I tweeted it out earlier today. Thanks to Norton Media Center, we put together a bit of a video here that'll take you through some of the protocols that we have here at school. I figured I would show this to you tonight. It'll give you a good overview, and then we'll get into some more detail as we make our way through. Sounds like. It sounds like there is no sound for that for you. So I guess that'll hope to be a teaser, and I'll leave that available to you. I tweeted it, and we'll be sending it out tomorrow night as well with the rest of that. So just to give you a heads up, that's one way that we're going to try to welcome back some of our students as far as orienting them to the building, is to see some of the spaces as we go through. It's available on the Norton Media website, I believe. And like I said, I tweeted it out, and we'll email it out tomorrow as well, so you can watch it sort of at your leisure. It seems that unfortunately we don't have the sound for it right now, or it's not working embedded within the presentation as it is. Just to give you kind of catch you up to speed how things are going to work throughout the course of the year to keep you informed about happenings here at Norton High School. As it says there, we're going to have a communication plan that's going to have a variety of different ways. We're going to reach out to the community, students, and parents. We're definitely going to be utilizing our district website, which we'll use to update, as well as the high school site. We are also going to be launching what's known as a Google site that'll have the title NHS Hybrid site. And on that, we'll have specific information to Norton High School in this hybrid year. Things about health and safety, certainly things about resources, and also social emotional resources. And I'll continue to publish the newsletter. I've obviously published one last night. I'll be publishing one tomorrow. I'm going to try this year to publish them on Monday evenings. Some feedback that I received was that was a better time to reach families than Friday evenings, as we have in the past. And within that will be embedded a lot of question and answer, as well as some new resources as we move forward. This is just to give you a sense. This will be the Google site that I'll be launching later this year, or later this week, actually, sorry, tomorrow, and I'll send it out. It'll have a great deal of resources, many of the same things that I've published already, but additional sort of screencast PowerPoints, similar to the one that we're going to take a look at tonight, for the betterment of students and for families to take a look at what's going on in Norton High School. Some things just to kind of cover here. The way this presentation is laid out is I'm going to talk a little about a few things that are important for the beginning of the year, and then I'll kind of take you through some of the things that will be happening throughout the course of the day. And then at the conclusion of it, we'll do some question and answer, and I'll try to preempt some of those questions that I'm seeing coming in, talking about attendance and grading and those types of things that we've made some decisions on. First, before I begin, I just want to sort of give a shout out to all of the volunteers. As I'm sure to put in that initial reopening plan that I sent out last night, we had a volunteer committee of about 27 individuals that were teachers, students, parents, academic coordinators, administrators, our school nurse, all got together and gave up their time over the last couple of weeks of August to meet and really hash out some of these very specific things for our school. So some of the things they came up with, and these are the recommendations that the committee made, is to think about beyond the typical school supplies, as pen, pencil, notebooks, and paper, that we wanted to make sure that we touched on a couple of other things. Obviously, approved face masks. We'll talk more about masks here in a little bit, that they do have to be masks that cover the nose and mouth, rather than just bandanas or gaiters. We are also going to be issuing our Chromebooks. Actually, this is a good time to plug. Tuesday will be our 9th grade and new student Chromebook distribution. It happens at 3 different times over the course of Tuesday here at the high school. It'll be happening outside, so parents and students can drive up to receive their Chromebook. You need to bring that every day. We're going to recommend headphones, especially when we get to LLB, which I'll talk about in a little bit, which is a Lancer learning block. It's something like a homeroom or an advisory. There might be opportunities to do some remote meetings from a classroom with clubs and activities and things like that. And in order to do that, students would need to have headphones in school, as well as typical supplies. A few other things to note for the 2020-2021 school year is that we will not be issuing lockers this year. We will not have students use school-issued lockers. The primary reason for that is that it's difficult to keep people spaced at lockers, particularly when there's passing time. Students need to use lockers, which they typically don't at the high school anyhow. You'll have people running into each other, passing each other, which is something that we're trying to avoid by maintaining those 6 feet of physical distance. We will also not have locker rooms open this year. Our physical education students really need to be prepared and bring things to be ready to participate. Certainly on the first few days, our physical education department and wellness department will be talking about what types of things they need to bring to school, but we will not have locker rooms open, just that it's too difficult in order to maintain the safety protocols and physical distance within those locker rooms. We will not have any open water fountains for students to use. We're going to try to limit sharing of items. We will have our touchless water bottle fillers that are going to be available, and students would be a good idea to bring a water bottle, particularly one with a straw that might be able to drink during the day without having to remove a mask. Something else that might be of use is that we also will be eating lunch outside quite a bit today, at least as weather permits. We'll also be encouraging classes to take their classes into other spaces outside the building. So to pack into a bag, either a towel or a small blanket or a yoga mat or something along those lines might be a good idea, so that students have their own ground covering for when they go out to the sides. Obviously, other things is students obviously will be bringing cell phones. That's something that happens here at the high school. We won't be using some of our traditional protocols of putting cell phones into pocketed folder or hangings at the front of the classrooms, because that will obviously not be sanitary. So we're asking students to make sure that they abide by any cell phone policies, such as keeping their phone in their bag over the course of the class period. So those are some things before we even start talking about arriving at school. One of the big things that we talk about with personal accountability is students really need to make sure that they're monitoring their own health. Definitely adolescents, developmentally appropriate, that they should be really taking care of themselves. Obviously, parents also monitoring them. But any types of these symptoms, students really need to stay home. That is going to be the first sort of line of defense here, is to keep sickness and disease or germs out of our building. So anyone with any of these symptoms, please stay home. If obviously symptoms persist, seek out a doctor, those types of things before coming to school. In the past, maybe students have really wanted to come to school, not to miss a test or something like that. It's critically important this year, more than any other, that they stay home. As far as attendance goes, our attendance policy for reporting still is in effect. Certainly at the beginning of the year here, we will be trying to verify contact information as well. Please make sure that if your student's going to be absent, that you call the school and speak to the nurse as well in order to give them the reason why you're going to be out. If it's sickness, it would also be good to know if there are not COVID-related symptoms, but just something like a stomach bug or one of those things, as your student is going to miss school. So make sure we follow the typical protocols here at Norton High School, which is outlined in our student handbook on our website, to call ahead of time in order to excuse absences. So we're going to get into some of our kind of protocols here that are specific to this year, that are going to be very different. So the first thing that we're going to try to do here is to stagger our arrival. One of the biggest areas in the school that happens where people congregate together is at arrival time. One of the things that we're going to be doing is propping doors. So students will not have to pause in the door in order to open one. They will not have to push open doors or anything like that. We're also going to be utilizing two different entrances this year. One, our front entrance, and also our auditorium entrance. So students can enter either one. At both places, there will be an administrator, a hand sanitization station, as well as an administrator checking for masks wearing, that they adhere to the mask protocol, as well as offering any other masks, disposable masks, to students to have one on that particular day. We're going to ask drop-offs, so students who are getting a ride from their parents to arrive between 7:30 and 7:40. All the time reporting directly to our first period class, we'll get to our schedule here in a little bit, which for most of the days will be to our Lancer Learning Block. It's like a homeroom or advisory. We'll be going right there, taking our seats in a socially distant fashion. We'll be abiding by the passing one-way directions in our hallways, but to get there, sit down in the classroom. There will be no breakfast served in the morning at school. There will be no typical behavior in high school. It's been kind of students to do laps around the hallway or congregate in the cafeteria. There could be none of that this year, unfortunately. Students have to report right to their classroom. We're also asking drivers, and this is one reason why we have LLB at the beginning of the day, is to allow drivers to arrive later. So they can come to 7:40 and 7:50, a little bit late to school, but it's important to stagger that arrival. And they won't be missing class time on those LLB times, so they'll be going right there. Anyone after 7:50 would be checking in at the main office. One thing that'll be covered slightly in this presentation, but will be more later on, is we're utilizing a new electronic pass system. So students will not have the paper passes that they typically had when they arrived tardy, but they'll be given a digital tardy pass in order to make their way to class, where the teachers will know where they're coming from. Something that I sent out last night and I received quite a few questions about is parking. The school committee has waived the parking fee for this year. So anyone who would like, has obviously a car and a license, can get a parking permit. We will have plenty of spaces. We're going to try to do it in order to stagger parking spots. Students who are in cohort 1 are going to be issued a odd number spot. Students who are in cohort 2 will be issued a even numbered spot. So when students arrive, they can park spread apart and not have to sort of get out of the car and be right next to people as they do so. I sent out a link to a form. That form is only accessible by students. I'm going to send it out to students at the end of this week as well. So if you click on it and you're having trouble opening it, have your student do it with their Norton High School login and they'll be able to do so. It's also might be beneficial for you to do that with a mobile device. It allows you to upload some of the files of a photo of a license and registration, as well as read and sign off on the parking contract there. Again, we're asking students to arrive between 7:40 and 7:50 if they're driving. We do not need permits issued before the school year. We're going to be issuing them in LLB. So as students arrive on Wednesday, this is the first time I'll mention it, but I'll mention it a few times as we go through. Wednesday is a cohort 2 day. So students who are in cohort 2 will be the first ones to come to school, and they can park in an even numbered spot. On Thursday, which is the first day for cohort 1, students can park there in an odd number spot when they arrive. Something else that students will see as they enter the building is we have a great deal of signage. There's going to be signs everywhere in the bathrooms for washing hands. And there's going to be signs for wearing masks, maintaining social distance, and obviously places to wait. The most common sign will definitely be an arrow because we're going to be running students in one direction in our hallways so that there's not congregation. There's not going to be people passing each other as they move along. A little bit more about masks, as I mentioned. We'll have some of this information posted to students as well. Again, by school committee policy, we're looking for approved masks that are cloth or disposable paper masks that cover the entire nose and mouth. So no bandanas, no neck gaiters or scarves or anything like that. We're also asking students to practice good mask hygiene. And what that means is not to touch your face, not to remove the masks. And if you do, remove them by the straps. And to make sure that hands are washed after you do so. Not to wear masks that don't cover your mouth or ones that are dirty or that might not provide the protection that the rest of the community needs. Once again, too, if a student does not have a mask, we're asking students to bring their own. And in many cases, it might be advisable to bring more than one, especially if you're going to be changing it after eating lunch, or perhaps one will get dirty or sweaty or however it might be throughout the course of the day, to please replace your mask there. So it would be a good idea to bring more than one. We will have a supply of masks if students forget, their masks are damaged, or any situations like that, we will be able to provide a disposable mask for that day. Something that is important is also mask breaks. So we're going to offer mask breaks in 2 different ways here at Norton High School. One will be whole class mask breaks. So when a teacher decides they're going to take their class outside in order to have class, obviously that will be an opportunity for students to remove their masks when they're further than 6 feet apart outside. Teachers can also elect to take a mask break with a whole class outside to some of our designated areas, outside our cafeteria and others. That would be up to the teacher's discretion if they'd like to. Every student needs a mask break during the day. So if a student talks to a teacher and lets them know, I haven't had a mask break today, I really need one. Or even if it's just a particularly hot day or humid day or something along those lines and a student wants one, they can take an individual mask break outside the classroom in the hallway. During passing time, we cannot have students without masks, but when it's during class time, there shouldn't be anyone else in the hallway. Students can step outside, remove their mask, have a quick break from classroom, and then return to class. So by having sort of these whole class mask breaks, as well as individual mask breaks, I think our students will have opportunities throughout the course of the day to be mask-free. Obviously, this does not include lunch as well. Lunch is an opportunity where they will not be wearing masks as they eat and drink. So that's an important thing here, to provide students with that ability to take that off. And it's also up to sort of developmentally students to advocate for themselves. If they're in a class and they're having a difficult time, perhaps they'd like to step outside, just outside the classroom door, remove their mask. They can do that individually at the discretion of the teacher. As we mentioned, another huge aspect of this, another one of them, is to wash our hands. So there's going to be hand sanitizer stationed all around the school. I gave a quick picture here of one of our foot-operated pumps. We have many of those in high traffic areas around the cafeteria. They'll be in the gymnasium during lunch. We'll also have them at entrances and at sort of critical spots around the building. So students will use that. Hand washing is still the best option. We'll have those signs posted in all of our bathrooms, but certainly if it is a situation where you're having lunch or something like that, rather than waiting in line at the bathroom in order to wash your hands, hand sanitizer will be provided. We'll also be having hand sanitizer in every single classroom. They'll be there in order to, and it'll be part of the protocols, which we'll talk here in a little bit, for students to have when they enter and exit the classroom to sanitize their hands. So physical distancing, and this is our weight protocol. We are going to maintain physical distance of 6 feet as often as is possible in the school. That is a very strict thing that we're adhering to in classrooms. Desks are spread 6 feet apart. In the classrooms, as we'll get to some pictures here in a second, teachers have classroom spaces that are 6 feet separated from students. In the hallways, we're traveling in one direction in order for students to be spaced out 6 feet as best they can. Cafeteria are spread out 6 feet. Wherever we can, we're going above and beyond the DESE recommendation of 3 feet or their strict guidance to be 3 feet, and we're going to 6 feet in order to maintain, again, for safety. This is something that is the biggest part of the hybrid model. Fewer students in our building allows us to have that additional space. I see someone raised their hand. Well, at the end of this, I will certainly be getting to some question and answers about physical distance. If you have any there too. So if you have a question as we're going through, please do type it into the Q&A. At the end of when I go through the presentation, I'll have the opportunity to answer those questions for you. So as we mentioned, transitions between classes. So this is as you arrive or as students arrive at school or throughout the day, we'll be going in one direction. We're asking them to actually move closer to a single file line on all of our classrooms have, or all of our hallways, excuse me, have classrooms on one side of the building. So we're asking students to stay on the other side so that teachers can be outside their classrooms monitoring and still have 6 feet of social distance between them and students passing in the hallway. There also might be times where students are asked to wait outside their classroom. So there will be a space for them to wait nearest the door as other students pass, again, across the 10-foot wide hallway on the other side. So we're going to be moving in one direction, keeping students as far away from other teachers who are supervising the hallway as possible. There is going to be quite a bit of signage. Our stairways are also going to be one way. There'll be a lot of signage in order to indicate which way people are going. They have to observe decals on the floor, on the walls, and posted on doors and in stairwells as well. So all of those need to be observed as we move between classes. So we have some in-school cleaning protocols here as well. And this is something that is covered in that video a little bit that I'll show you as far as the things that are going to be in place within the building. There's going to be two cleaning protocols here. One, as students enter a classroom, they should be sanitizing their hands. The desks should have been sanitized, and I'll get to that as our exit protocol here in a second, by the student leaving the previous class. There will also be single-use disinfectant wipes there if students feel comfortable, not only with the disinfecting that their classmates or their schoolmates had done in the previous period. If they want to wipe down their desk, they can do that as well and grab one of those as they enter. After they're done with that, they can move to the front of the room, dispose of it, and sanitize their hands there again. So as you enter the classroom, we have plenty of time for transition. We've made transition time about 7 minutes to incorporate some of these cleaning protocols. As they enter, they can either sanitize their hands and take their seat, or take one of those wipes and continue to wipe down their desk and their chair as they move. Part of our exit protocol, and this is where a lot of the cleaning gets done here, is 1 minute prior to the end of the class. We're actually going to signify, because this is so important, we want students to actually have a bell that reminds them that it's time to clean. So prior to the end of class, 1 minute will be a cleaning bell where students will pack up their their items, make sure that everything is there, nothing is left behind. Once the teacher verifies that, they will be spraying a desk down. And then it is up to the student to take a single-use paper towel and spread and disperse that liquid disinfectant over the course of the desk. The disinfectant is EPA approved. It's active disinfectant ingredient is citric acid. So it's something that won't irritate the skin. It is just something that will break down. Actually, I won't even get into that. If the video works here, I might try it one more time here. Dr. Rigo explains how this happens on our next slide. But they will spread the disinfectant around the table, and then when they leave, it has a 5-minute kill time. As it dries, it will disinfect the desk. The students will discard their paper towel, sanitize their hands, and exit the classroom. And then, as I mentioned before, when they enter, they'll have the option of sanitizing that desk and chair with a single-use wipe as well. So students, if you're concerned about it and want to make sure, again, we're leaning on that responsibility to protect the community. Everyone will be washing their space. But if you'd like to and feel more comfortable taking an active role yourself, or for your student self, they can do that as well. I might try this real quickly here, and I'll keep an eye on the Q&A to see if the sound, this is a slightly different format of video, so I'm hopeful that it will operate. All right, so it doesn't seem like there's sound there as well. So I will be posting this presentation so you can take a look at that. That's our science department giving a demonstration of what the desk cleaning protocol will be. Again, and Dr. Rigo is one of our AP biology teachers, someone who knows a lot about this, can explain to you sort of how the disinfectant works there as well. So besides cleaning protocol, I do want to touch on some of what the teaching and learning is going to look like here. And before I do that, though, I do want to welcome Mr. Aaron Sumner has joined us here. We figured it out. He's part of our panelists, so he'll be with us to answer some questions as well as we make our way through. Our hybrid model is going to operate like this. We essentially have 1 week that is going to always be the same as far as Monday being a fully remote day. During that time, we will have students learning remotely from home, and that's the type of language that we're going to use is a remote learning day for all. Those students will be logging into their computers and logging into Google Meets or Zoom sessions with all of their classes on that day. So those are very, very brief class meetings that take the part of basically half the day in the morning, beginning at 9, we'll get to a schedule here in a second, ending at 11:30. And the purpose of that day is to touch base with every single teacher so that every teacher sees someone at the beginning of the week, kind of set the tone for the week and exactly what they're going to be doing. Then is when we break into our cohorts, when we're in school. On Tuesday and Thursday, cohort 1 is going to attend school in person. Cohort 2 will be learning from home. On Wednesday, it will be reverse of that. Cohort 2, learning here from school in person, where cohort 1 is learning from home. Now, this is the type of language that we're going to try to use and be consistent with. The remote learning is asynchronous, meaning that there's a teacher there leading the discussion or leading the lesson that day at home on Mondays. Our in-person learning will obviously be in the classroom, very similar to what our traditional classroom has been, obviously with modifications to allow for 6 feet of physical distancing. Students will also be learning from home here. And this will be independent work, is that students or teachers will be providing that work to students with a video to introduce the lesson every day that they're working from home. There is going to be daily attendance, which I'll get to at this part to start the routine, but those learn from home days for students is largely going to be up to them to dictate their schedule. They will have something in every class that is on that day, however, to work their way through on that day. So it's something that it's going to start with a teacher-led video and work their way into some independent work at home. I'll have more information of that I'll be putting out too to give you a little bit more of an idea of what you can expect as we're making our way into the school year here. This is our schedule, and we broke it down into purple week and white week. And the reason why we did that is to try to clarify a few things, because we have cohort 1 and 2. Our blocks are labeled sort of alphabetically, A through G. And so we didn't want week 1 as well to be another numerical naming convention. So we went with purple week and white week. So we have a 2-week cycle here at the high school. We wanted to make this predictable, which is why we did not use our typical 7-period rotational schedule, because that means that every single day, the days of the week have no correspondence to what our class schedule is. But in this case, it is predictable. If it is purple Tuesday on that day, you know that it's going to be cohort 1 at school. They're going to be starting with LLB or advisory and moving into their classes A, B, C, D, E. If it's purple Wednesday, you know that's cohort 2 that's going to be starting with advisory, going through A, B, C, D, E. Similarly, if you're at home and it's a purple week, you know those are the classes on Wednesday, if you're in cohort 1, on Wednesday and Friday when you're at home, those are the classes that you're going to be going to. So during White Week, it works the same way, is that White Tuesday is only going to be associated with D, E, F, G, A, B. So those are going to be the classes that students will attend if they're in person, and they'll be the classes that they're responsible for if they're learning from home. As I mentioned, you can see our Mondays that are fully remote are short, 2.5 hours of classroom. It's kind of running through LLB for some weekly announcements, for anything that has to be sort of set for the week, if there's special events or anything like that happening. And then you see that you run through all the classes very quickly to kind of set the tone, check in, see the entire cohort together, take attendance in those actual blocks. The rest of that day is dedicated to PD and collaboration. That is really critical for teachers in order to be able to work across grade level teams to provide a consistent learning situation for all of the students in their grade level teams. It's also an opportunity for some teachers and paraprofessionals to reach out with students and provide some individual help as well. The way that we're going to be taking attendance here, and this is an important thing, is that we are responsible for daily attendance. Is that the state is requiring us to enter daily attendance for students even when they're at home. So our Monday remote day, students will be having their attendance taken in class. They need to participate in that Zoom meeting or Google Meet meeting. They have to be online, and they have to do whatever the teacher there is asking, either sort of acknowledge them, they might do a Zoom poll, they could do verbal participation, or chat participation. All of those things are going to be done in order to take attendance, is you have to be there and you have to participate. So we're not requiring necessarily for cameras to be on, but students have to participate in some way in order to be counted as present at that Monday hybrid day. Now the attendance is going to work a little bit different on the hybrid days. So daily attendance will be taken for students in school as it always has been, at the beginning of the day for daily attendance as well as every period. However, the students learning from home will be responsible for checking in order to be counted for daily attendance. So LLBs or D block, for one of the cycle days that starts the day, will be, the teachers there will be distributing forms that students have to check in by 8 o'clock in the morning in order to designate that they have arrived at school from home. And then they can begin their day. So students can't begin their remote or learning from home day later in the day. They have to be up in order to check in with their LLB teacher that morning. Period attendance for the rest of the time learning from home will be done based on what the teacher is assigning. So they will assign something that we're calling, and we get to grading, we'll talk a little bit about this, something that is an academic habit assignment, something that is done for completion, that is practice, that is for trying to have students exert effort. Or it might be progress that they make on something that they've assigned as academic mastery, like a project where there's a discrete task that is going to be done that day. Or it might be something like an SEL check-in, or some type of what we might think of in a classroom as a ticket to leave, something that demonstrates that they have created, or they have completed what was assigned that day in order to check in on period attendance. That is something that teachers will keep track of in order to make sure that students are staying engaged at the times that they are going to be there in school. To talk a little bit about learning spaces, I just have 3 pictures here that we've used, and I can talk a little bit about what you're seeing here. Is our classrooms typically have either 5-foot tables or desks. And in some cases, we actually combine the two to make sure that we have adequate space. And then our science rooms have 6-foot tables that you can see here on the far right in 264. All of them have been set up in order to achieve 6 foot of social distance or physical distance. And additionally, at the front of the room, there has been a taped off area that is for exclusively teachers. Some teachers have elected to move their desks to that area so that that is where they stay for the most part throughout the course of the day. Some teachers have kept their desks at the back of the room and maybe working their way to the front in order to instruct students. But everybody in a stationary way will be more than at least 6 feet apart as they're making their way through the day. As I mentioned, we're also going to be urging teachers when they can to take their students outside. So we identified some areas around the building where teachers can take their students outside in order to conduct class and have a little bit of additional space. This is certainly something that I think our teachers are welcoming, that they'll have the opportunity to go out and sort of spend some time in the sun as long as weather permits. As you can see, they're kind of far flung here. Some of these spaces don't have Wi-Fi. So as students are outside at that time, they'll be doing something that is entirely disconnected from the computer, which again, based on sort of where we are, I think is a positive. Students will be only engaging and interacting with their teacher and their classmates in a safe way outside. All of our music classes that are going to involve playing of brass or woodwind instruments, as well as chorus, will be taking place outside when they're singing, so that students can achieve 10 feet of social distance. That's going to allow them, again, to perform where they couldn't do that in some of the spaces that we have inside. Some things that are going to be restricted throughout the course of the day, as I mentioned, locker rooms will not be open. We are also not going to be opening our weight room or fitness center here at the school. The gymnasium as well for our wellness classes are going to be taking place primarily outside. We actually reserve sort of the playing fields for those wellness classes. Half of the gymnasium is actually to be converted to a food service area. I'll show you an image of that here in a little bit, where we have approximately 65 to 70 desks spread out within the gym so that students can eat their lunch there at a safe distance. Our bathrooms, we're going to ask students to not use bathrooms during the passing time. That will allow, during passing times, we don't want more students in the bathroom than can be there safely with social distance. So we're asking students to forego that and to wait until they're in class. And as I mentioned, we're going to be using a digital hall pass system called eHall Pass. When I send this out, you can click on some of those links and watch some of the demos. The idea here is that we can actually limit the number of students who are going to a particular bathroom or a particular room. This is also going to help us when it comes to accessing guidance, accessing the nurse, where the guidance counselor can actually kind of send for a student, give an electronic pass so that student can leave LLB or class in order to go see their guidance counselor, or they can get a pass to that guidance counselor and the guidance counselor is immediately notified of it. So we're going to be utilizing this to really help with social distancing, but also make it so that we can more paperlessly communicate with students around the building in order to get to some of our school personnel and access some of our services. So we're hopeful that this will help be really efficient and be very, very safe the way that we move about the building. But bathrooms, again, we're going to ask students to refrain from that during passing time in order to do so safely. Some of our food service locations. So we've kind of come to school, we moved about the building, we've had class, now it's time to eat lunch. We're going to be utilizing our cafeteria as well as our gymnasium. We also are going to be utilizing the outdoors. We really are going to urge students, all students, to eat outside. We have quite a large sort of area right in front of our cafeteria where students can spread out. I mentioned before, sort of bringing a towel or a blanket or something along those lines so that they can sit down with their friends and eat in a socially distant and safe manner outside. When weather does not permit, we have space inside. The cafeteria picture is particularly sort of poignant maybe. You can see the round tables that we used to have students, maybe 6 to 8 students sitting at one facing each other. They're only 5-foot wide tables. They don't work in this environment because we need students to be 6 feet apart. So we've replaced them with individual desks facing in a particular direction here for students to eat. They'll enter the food servery. There'll be decals on the floor to remain socially distanced. They'll pick up bag lunches in order to move to their space. We're going to do this in waves. So we have 3 lunches that are accounted for in the schedule. We're going to kind of divide them into 2 waves. One that will come down, pick up their lunches if they desire, or bring their bag lunches, go directly to the gymnasium, followed by the second wave, or outside if weather permits, and followed by the second wave, who will be going down to grab their food and eat in the cafeteria or outside. And the reason we're doing that is it's going to allow for a little bit of space in the servery so that students come down and are going to file through in a socially distant way. It's also going to allow our custodial staff to carry out a very similar protocol to the one that we had for classrooms, where they will go about spraying the desks. Students will distribute the disinfectant before they leave the lunchroom. Something, and I'm going to talk about this mostly for sort of social emotional learning in our Lancer learning blocks. This is going to be the opportunity, and this is something I'm going to emphasize with students as well, is our Lancer learning block is going to look very different this year. For one thing, it's going to be a little bit longer. That's going to give us the opportunity to provide different curriculum that students will be using within that. Things like having some social emotional curriculum through Edgenuity, that is one of our platforms that we're using. We're also talking about doing things for leadership, allowing students to meet with their classes, or sorry, excuse me, their activities and their clubs within LLB. And we're also talking about classes where we might have a class meeting that would happen sort of through remotely within the LLBs. The LLBs are going to be distributed differently this year to make sure that half of are in each cohort. They have been alphabetical before, which means we would have had large groups in LLBs, so we've had to redistribute them. We are also going to be maintaining that they're going to be in the same classes. So if it's going to be a junior class meeting, that can happen with junior class officers and the advisor, broadcasting very much the same way that we are here in a Google Meet or a Zoom meeting, so that all students can kind of see their class officers and understand what the class is doing during that time. We're also talking about using this in order to have some sort of socially distanced or physically distanced competitions, things like that, that can happen in the classroom but connected through our technology. One thing that I know that is frustrating to people and certainly does not make us happy about this, just as we go through this year with COVID and having to preserve the physical distance, is that we've had a wonderful tradition here at Norton High School of offering really diverse courses that all students can take at different times throughout the course of the year and kind of pick their own path. We have great electives, and we oftentimes have a period of time called the add-drop period where students can look at their schedule, try to make adjustments. We really cannot do that this year the way that we typically would, just because of how many and how complex the situation is. We really put together cohorts based on last name alphabetically, but also taking some input from some of our other schools. And so we have equally divided cohorts and no more, in almost all cases, of 14 students in a classroom. That's the most we can accommodate in our classrooms and maintain that distance. So with that added layer of complexity, it's very difficult to move students around. It's not like an elementary classroom where you're only looking at one class at one time. If you change cohorts, that affects 7 different classes. If you're going to try to juggle your electives or other classes, you might be moving 3 or 4 times, and that affects, again, all of those classes that might have some that are very large and cannot possibly accommodate another student. In the past, you had to think about basically just maybe a class limit of 28, and that would be that one class as you're switching in, which was tight enough. Now, when you add in the cohorts, it makes it much more difficult in order to move students around and make sure that everybody is being safe. So that is the reason why we're having very tightly restricted add-drop period here. If there's a mistake, we'll certainly correct. If a student is in a class they've passed before, if they're in a class that they have not passed a prerequisite, if they're a 9th grader in senior English, those are things that we will correct. But otherwise, we really need to stick with what we have as far as the schedules are concerned. As I mentioned, and this is just sort of at the tail end of the presentation here, some of the things that are in that document as well. We have some grading practices. Our task force got together and talked about sort of what our guiding principles for schoolwork and grading will be. We're really going to look at making sure that we're focused on 2 areas when it comes to hybrid learning. Academic mastery, we're going to emphasize depth over breadth. We're going to make sure that students are really digging into the concepts and skills that are critical to their particular discipline. Our grading criteria is going to focus on how well students have mastered a skill or concept. And then we're going to look at academic habits as well. Those are things that are going to encourage students in order to participate in teacher-led remote learning at home, or also complete remote work as they're learning from home on their own. So we're really going to be very discreet about dividing it into those 2 categories. We're looking to make sure that we're focusing most heavily on that mastery aspect, where 90% of the grade we're saying is going to be related to academic mastery, or 10% of it is going to be related to the habits of learning, completion of work, and those types of things. This is a value judgment. We think mastery is more important as far as learning those skills than the habits are. And it's also an acknowledgement that during a hybrid pandemic, when students are faced with a great deal of adversity, sometimes academic habits are going to be difficult to follow through on. So an acknowledgement that it's very important, but also an acknowledgement that we can be flexible with that in our academic habits. So this is the last slide. Like I said, we kind of went through all of this throughout the day. And then when we get to dismissal, just like when we're doing arrival, we are going to try to stagger our dismissal times. Students that are riding the buses will be dismissed at 2:05 to go right to their bus and comply with all of those protocols. Students who are on the first floor will be leaving at 2:07, and then the second floor at 2:09. Again, doors will be propped. Students will remove promptly out of the doors and to their cars or parents picking them up or to their buses and exit the parking lot. I apologize. I've talked for a long time here about this, and I want to make sure that we get to some questions that you have here. And certainly, open to being emailed or contacted through Let's Talk. I can answer other questions about this. And as I said, we're going to be releasing some things to model some of our asynchronous practices here that are going to emphasize these things on our hybrid learning website coming up on Friday, tomorrow. Mr. Sumner, are there any questions that we've gotten that are particularly poignant to you?
Yes, we have a few questions out there right now. The first of which is, what about children who will be in school for 4 days a week, and how does that make a difference in their schedule?
So the way that we're working with students who have needs that are going to be accommodated through 4 days a week is that they will be attending classes with one cohort. That's the only way we can accommodate those students and maintain that physical space. The other days that they're in school, they'll have a home base where they will be in order to receive services and to have extra support in those learn from home activities that are going to be being given by teachers. So essentially they will have support in the classrooms when they're there, as well as support when they're completing some of those other activities.
Another question is, when will supply lists come out?
So in the high school, we traditionally do not publish sort of class-wide or grade-wide supply lists. We traditionally leave it up to teachers, and if there are a few different school or classrooms or subjects throughout the building that might have some very specialized supplies, but that's pretty rare. Really, general supplies will do you very well over the course of the school year, meaning a 3-ring binder, folders, notebooks, pens, pencils, that type of thing. Those would be the things that you would want to purchase. If there's any specific stuff that will come from teachers actually on the day, the first day of school. Certainly teachers are understanding if they're going to ask you to have a specialized item that they're not going to expect you to have it that first day. I'm going to go right to the beginning of this presentation as well. And as I said, this will be published so that you can take a look at it as well. There are a few things that I'd urge you to think about as well based on this hybrid environment. And that would be some of these items here, making sure obviously face masks, but the items that might be outside of that are things like headphones. And also if a student is going to want to have some type of ground covering like a blanket or a yoga mat or something that they're going to have, they can sit on outside when they're doing class outside or lunch outside. So those would be the sort of specific things to hybrid, but otherwise just general school supplies would be the things to purchase.
How many electives should a freshman have?
So freshmen do not have many electives. Their schedule is quite full. Traditionally, you take 5 core subject areas and a year-long wellness class. So at most, freshmen generally have 2 electives, 1 per semester, or 1 elective that's a full year elective. As you move up through the grades, wellness is no longer full year, it's a half a year. Maybe some of those other classes you do not need to take, especially as maybe a senior. You don't have to take a 4th year of language if you don't desire, or you don't have to take a 4th year of science. You may be able to have more electives. But 9th graders have 5 core classes, including that language, a wellness class, and then really just the opportunity to take 1 or 2 electives if it's 2 semester long ones.
If a student has Chromebook issues, what will the protocol be to go to the technology department for it to be fixed?
So I'm going to defer a little bit to our technology department on that. I think we'll have some more information about that coming up. Definitely as far as the protocol used to be to go to the library, that still will be an option. I think we will have a few loaners there that have been cleaned and will have been able to be picked up by students. Because we're going to be using eHall Pass, that'll be an opportunity for students to leave. They can't just kind of go and go to the library and grab a computer, but they will have that opportunity. There'll also be support as far as dropping off their computer with the tech department overnight or over the course of that would be obviously a full day, something along those lines to get fixed and get a loaner. So at the beginning and end of school or through using eHall Pass to go to the library there.
For students new to the school, will there be any assistance finding their way around the building?
Certainly. So that's something that as far as the beginning of the year and kind of an orientation, unfortunately, we aren't going to have an in-person orientation where we'd be able to give students a tour of the building. We are going to be putting together kind of a video orientation that'll introduce students to sort of give pictures of all of our staff, let them know a little bit about the layout of the building, have a Q&A with some of our students so that they understand sort of what some of the demands of Norton High School are. That'll be kind of pushed out as well as an orientation. And there'll also be administrators and certainly staff will be out in the hallways on the first day of school, trying to help and assist students to find their way to their various classes. We'll also, part of the bit that I released is a map that allows students to take a look and they can kind of circle where their rooms are. We have a pretty sort of standard room numbering system, so it's pretty easy to find your way around, sort of starting in the top left-hand corner and making its way all the way around the building. It goes from 1 all the way around to 64 on the second floor and to, I think, about 48 down here on the first floor. But everything is numbered sequentially down those hallways as well.
Will there be volunteer requirements for students this year?
That's yet to be determined. As far as community service, the school committee did vote to sort of waive the community service graduation requirement for last year only. So we hope that this will be something that we can figure out other opportunities for students to fulfill community service. They might be opportunities that actually are even more important in sort of the COVID quarantine environment that we're in. So that is yet to be determined. Right now, yes, students are required to have 50 hours of community service in order to graduate, but we'll see if we need to make adjustments to that to prorate it based on not being able to fulfill them last year, but that's yet to be determined.
Was there summer work that was expected to be completed?
There is summer work. That is something that was went on the newsletter I sent out last night, as well as sort of the last one of the year. If you go to the Norton High School website, it's right on the front page. There's a button that says summer assignments. That would take you to a list of all of the different classes. 9th grade students and students who are not taking any APs only have English and math that they need to take a look at, and those are the only summer assignments. Other than that, if students are taking AP classes, those have summer assignments that are specific to the class. Everyone has a math and an English, but only AP students have additional summer work to work on. And that's right on the front page. There's a button that says summer assignments. You click on that and it'll tell you what all of those are.
Do we start with a purple or white week?
So I meant to discuss this maybe a little bit more. We are going to start, and it's going to be, the answer to that question is neither. So the day that we start is a Wednesday. So we are actually going to run for those first 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're going to run a special schedule here at school. The hours of the time of day are the same. So arrival's the same, dismissal's the same, but the blocks, send out more information about this, will be different. We'll get to every single class. So in speaking with our staff here, they felt sort of starting with this, if they were, especially cohort 1 on that Thursday, they wouldn't see some of their students until well into the next week. So we are going to start with Wednesday, cohort 2 will come to school and we'll run a schedule that allows them to see all of their teachers in all of their classes on that day and for those first 3 days. That means Monday the 21st, we are going to start with Purple Week Tuesday, or remote Monday, but then Tuesday. So it'll be a Purple Week starting the 21st. Again, we'll definitely emphasize this in future communications as we go, as we're going to start fresh Purple Week on Monday, the 21st. And those first 3 days, Wednesday cohort 2, Friday cohort 2, will begin, as I said, at the normal time, but run a separate schedule. And same thing with that Thursday cohort 1.
Will schedules be mailed out?
Schedules will not be mailed out. They will not be sent out in paper form. They're available through the community portal on our website through SchoolBrains. There is a template there that demonstrates sort of the way that this schedule with a purple and a white week are working. Students can access that by going to what it says there is reports. When they open their portal and it says reports, they can go and look at the template that they could print themselves, but we are not going to be mailing out paper schedules.
What will the first day look like for cohort 1, which will be learning from home on Wednesday?
So next week, we'll be publishing all of the classes Google Classrooms. This is something that's going to be required this year. Every class will have a Google Classroom, which we're using as our learning management system. This is something that will also be open for parents. We're going to utilize Google Classroom Guardian feature, which will update parents on missing assignments and those types of things. I will send out to students, to parents, a list of Google Classroom codes. And the expectation would be that students on that day would be joining those Google Classrooms and finding their opening day Learn from Home assignment. They will be asked to check in that very first time, like I said, by 8 o'clock on that Wednesday with their LLB teacher. Their LLB teacher will be posting a Google Classroom code themselves. So students will need to check in via a Google form with their LLB teacher by 8 o'clock on that Wednesday, and then they will be beginning going through and finding and entering and joining those classrooms so that they can complete those Learn from Home assignments on that day.
If a student is full remote, how does the summer work get turned in, or does it need to be?
I believe it would be. There are going to be teachers who are going to be working with the fully remote students, and I believe they will design a protocol in order to be able to do that, to collect that homework digitally, and they're going to be aligned with the curriculum at Norton High School, so that will lead into that curriculum.
When will we find out more information about fully remote students?
In the coming days, I believe that Mr. Marty Gagan, who is the principal at the Hay, has taken over as the K-12 administrator for that. He and the assistant superintendent, Jen O'Neill, are going to be doing a similar sort of Q&A for fully remote students. I believe they are going to schedule that and inform everybody about it for Monday of next week or Tuesday of next week. So they will be having a lot more information for that at that time.
Would it be possible to publish the safety data sheets for cleaning products and disinfectants that the students will be using?
I believe those are already posted through the district protocols. If you go to the district site and go to the COVID updates, they were also emailed out. The facilities update has all of that information about which chemicals and cleaners are used. They're all EPA approved. As I mentioned, sort of specifically designed not to irritate skin and be safe to use. So all of that information, including any additional information you might have about the other cleaning products that are not going to be used by students. We have an electrostatic sprayer that we will be cleaning the rooms every night, which actually has disinfectant that sort of wraps itself around surfaces in order to make sure it thoroughly disinfects. All of that information can be looked at the facilities guide that's published on our website, or on the district website. It's also linked in the initial reopening plan that I had sent out last night. If you go in that and go down to cleaning and procedures, there's a hyperlink there that would give you the list or give you to the facilities guidance or facilities protocols that has all of the cleaning and disinfecting chemicals listed there.
If students still have books from last year, how will those books get returned to their teachers?
So we're looking at having a book collection actually before school on not the first week, but the second week. So we're collecting master lists from departments. So rather than return or kind of scramble around the building looking for last year's teacher, you would actually deposit it as you enter the building. We would check you off on that list. We'll have some teachers here who are kind of working with students and making sure that they check people off. Those books will be then sort of kept separate before then being redistributed to new students this year. So we will not be collecting those books the first week, but we'll plan on collecting them sort of universally from all students outside on that second week of school. So please do safe keep those items. We will be collecting them the second week of school.
Can you please review the learning at home requirements for attendance? Even though the learn at home days are more up to the individual, they need to take attendance at 8 a.m.?
Yes, so we are responsible for daily attendance, and students need to check in. And this is also somewhat responsive to things that I received in feedback, particularly from last spring, is students' sleep schedules became quite disrupted in the remote learning period. So even when students are learning from home, there is a hard time in the morning by 8 a.m. that they should be up and checked in. Obviously, there aren't requirements to begin things right away, but teachers will also be posting at least 30 minutes before that what their activities are for the day. So they need to navigate their way to the Google Classrooms, take a look at the videos that are being posted by teachers in order to orient themselves or what the learn from home work is that day. It might be something else that's a long-term project that they already know that they need to do and get right into, but it's going to be up to them to get checked in by 8 a.m. and then throughout the day complete that assignments. It's 5 or 6 periods per day. We are going to aim for about 45 minutes of remote work per class. So that would be something that needs to be spaced out by those students. That's pretty mirroring what a student who's learning in person would have. 53-minute periods, obviously with sort of once getting in class and settled in those things, we're aiming for 45 minutes per class on that day for students to work.
And there's a number of questions regarding athletics that I can answer right now. In terms of spectators, I know it's on a lot of people's minds. At this time, the TVL principals and ADs voted to not have spectators at games this fall season. With that in mind, just the first game isn't until October 10th, so depending on how things go, it could possibly change, but at this time, there will be no spectators at games. In terms of after-school dismissal for athletics and changing protocols, it should only be half as many students, and we will be using the bathrooms for students to change to get ready for sports. And I'm encouraging coaches to start practice a little bit later so they can have more time to do that. If you have any other questions about athletics, you can email me, and we'll also have a sports night probably later next week.
So it's 8 o'clock. I do want to thank you again for joining us tonight. I hopefully, we've thrown a lot of information at you. As Mr. Sumner just said, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Again, I'll be publishing another newsletter tomorrow that'll also introduce our hybrid learning site. And again, we're putting together sort of some asynchronous material for students and families that'll kind of cover much of the same material here, as well as responsive to some of the questions that you ask. But please don't hesitate to reach out if you do have questions. And once again, thank you very much. We're really excited about this year. It's going to be a year, everyone has been saying it, a year like no other, and it definitely will be, but we're definitely excited to have students back in the building. It's been way too long since we've had students in the hallways at Norton High School here. So we're very excited to get them back in the building, and we can't wait in order to welcome them here. So thank you again for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Sign off, and we'll be seeing you shortly again. Please do look for those updates as we're sending them out. They'll be coming quite fast and furious in the next few days here to give information. So thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.